And with that, I think we are we are done with the Zen 5 deep dive. I let's move into a Tech Poutine Q&A. So if anybody has any questions about what we just presented, or you'd like to know George's favorite flavor cheese, this is what this time is for. It's let's decompress. Though it will be said, I'll bring up this one from Xenon G. Where's the Zen 5 X3D? Nothing has been said about X3D products yet. However, TSMC has said they do support chip-on-chip stacking with 4 nanometer and 3 nanometer, I think. So whatever comes. As usual, the previous 3Ds were never part of the OG launches. They always came, what, 6 months in advance? I think your audio is gone. I think you need to jiggle the cable again. No, I think it's the cable on your laptop. Okay, no. I'll tell you when we're back. When you're back. Yeah, so give it a few months. You know, CES is January. That might be the right time for that to show up. I will go over some of the live chats because we did get a few. Thank you for Nanda Gopal for the 400 rupees for your super sticker. Much appreciated. Thank you. Erkin, another 100 Turkish lira. Proudly giving away 100 lira from my 5950X PC. I'm currently running a Threadripper system, and I called it Broadwell because it replaced a Broadwell system that I ran for 8 years. I'm going to go solo so we don't get crotch shots from George. Erkin also asks again, another 100 Turkish lira. Thank you. Any opinion on Intel's x86S proposal? For x86 CPUs, has AMD considered anything similar? So I think we have George and I have a video on this. He might remember more than I do because I've done about 1 million videos since. TechTechPotato x86S. Yeah. Intel. It's called. The thumbnail says Intel wants Fred. It's me and George. I think last year during Computex, we spoke about how there are certain things that are going to be implemented in, we think, like Xeon 7th gen, maybe some Xeon 6th gen. That will go down this route, but it won't be a either or, as in it will be a switch you can flick in the BIOS, or it may be for specific customers, so it'll be a slow rollout. It's most people we've spoken to agree it's a good thing. It makes kernel development and Linux development a lot easier. Apparently, there's one kernel developer that's really pissed off about it, and has to do a lot of work in order to manage it. But it makes sense if it reduces overhead, if it helps improve a little bit of security as well. It's not really a speed thing. It's not really a performance thing. It's not really an efficiency thing. A lot of people get that wrong. It's yeah. George is definitely having mic issues. I think his cable may be dead. But it's just in the same way that Zen 5 is clean sheet and let's rebuild from a new base. x86S is an attempt to do that. Not rebuild from a new base, but at least let's create a new foundation to make things simpler, and make things more secure. So yeah, but no, thank you for your support as always. That's what makes this show continue. It's Felix says it's mostly great. Some folks will run into trouble, and for the most part, it makes verification easier. Yeah, it's time to market is everything in this business. So cutting out some of the legacy, if it's sufficiently legacy, is a good thing. Or you just tell all your users, we're changing now. Screw you if you're still on the old thing. So Carbonium 12. What is the pipeline depth and how many pipeline stages you lose with bad branch prediction? I think the let's see if George is back with us. Hello, George. Yeah, he's still working. I think us.
So I think what ended up happening was the battery on the transceiver died.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So I think that's what happened because it's not coming back up.
So the question is,
I do apologize.
that's all right. We've been going for a long time. The question is, how many pipeline stages do you lose with bad branch prediction? I think you said 13 to me earlier today.
So on Zen 3 and 4, you have a range. You have anywhere between 12. You can lose anywhere between 12 and 18 cycles to branch prediction to mispredict. With the common case being 13 cycles. Now, Mike Clark said that he wouldn't go into it more, but he did say that do expect to see an increase of a cycle for Zen 5 versus Zen 4. So potentially the common case now being 14 cycles, which that is technically one of the disadvantages of the two-ahead branch predictor is if you do mispredict, it can take a little bit to come back, like a little bit longer. It's complicated. As many things are.
Alexander Pushka asks, what do you think about APX instruction set and support of it in AMD? APX, is that a similar thing to AVX 10?
No,
is that part of AVX 10?
APX is the extension of the integer instructions.
To do what?
Like adding more integer registers, so from 16 to 32.
Yeah.
Adding more instructions, like more load and store operations. There, and then re-encoding a lot of old ops in EVX, which is the AVX 512 instruction encoding. Some people are criticizing it because it's not a rewrite in the form that not AVX, in the format that AMD 64 was, but only really time will tell.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at some sources here. APX compiled code achieves a claims 10% increases efficiency due to 10% fewer instructions.
Yeah.
It had all the features you said, including support for 3 operand instruction formats. New instructions optimized for predicted loads, including a novel 64-bit absolute jump instruction. The changes from VEX to EVEX. Yeah. It's for some reason I hadn't threw that in my head. Maybe I'd forgotten it. And Navjack says, if I upgraded my machine to one of these 128 gigs of RAM and I keep my 2080 Ti, would the NPU and my system RAM run my local LLMs quicker than the 2080 Ti? Never used NPU before. Probably not.
No, unless with the one caveat being if that 128 gig RAM lets you run a better model. It won't run faster, but you can run, say, with more parameters or
this is
high data types or whatever.
This is why we're getting NPUs in mobile first, because we don't have many GPUs. I've spoken to all the companies about having NPU on an M.2 card, because that would be like a little thing that you could just stick in. Systems these days have 5 M.2 slots now.
I mean, Google had one of those, didn't it?
No, that wasn't an M.2. That was a USB. That was the Coral, based on the TPU V1.
I thought it did come in a M.2 format.
Intel's VPU V2, not the V2.7 in Meteor Lake, but the V2, had an M.2 version for embedded, but they never commercialized it properly.
Mm.
And I keep saying that's one way to get thousands of people using your hardware is to offer it in that format. Nvidia's answer is you got a big GPU, so why not use
Yeah.
that instead? Which is
Uh,
in the early cycle of where we are with NPUs and AI, that's a recommended position to take. However,
yeah.
I don't think it's the long-term solution. Um,
I think it's here's the thing. It's the Wild West right now. It's essentially
yep,
it's the early 2000s of NPUs for all intents and purposes.
yep,
It took what, 10, 12 years to start, well, less than that,
yeah,
but about 10 years to start really getting sort of standards and
yep, yeah.
well-defined stuff out.
It's yeah. It's going to take time, just in the same way that gaming took time as
Yeah.
as people in the gaming space dropped out. We ended up with two vendors, and then we coalesced around DirectX, and everybody decided this is the formats that game code has to be in, or the vector formats or whatever. Number formats, for
Mhm.
example. When that becomes a bit more standardized, then we'll know
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing and what the comparison points are. Um,
So
King Ok Chung asks, "What's your thoughts on XDNA software integration with normal software?" So there is a software package called Ryzen AI software that you can download and use with current Phoenix APUs.
Phoenix and Hawkpoint, yeah.
Phoenix and Hawkpoint. Um, they went ahead and basically designed a standalone version of what some of their FPGA compiler tools specifically for this.
Mhm.
I've not actually kept up to date with it since they announced it. Have you?
So they presented this in the graphics in ISV slide deck,
Mm,
but th- if you remember, I think it was when RDNA 3 launched. Maybe it was RDNA 2. No, it was
mm.
RDNA 3. They were talking about this unified software stack, which is what um which is what AMD is eventually
Oh,
going to
oh,
try and target.
yeah, yeah. So
The
this is more. Yeah, no, I remember what you're saying now. In the same way that Intel wants one API to be its unified
Yeah.
software stack for all of its hardware and for anybody else that comes in, um, AMD wants its own AI software stack so that all of its hardware, so that's GPU, NPU, MI300,
Yeah.
CDNA stuff. You basically run once and you write once, and then you can compile to target. Um,
So,
the only company that does this well is NVIDIA because they have one architecture.
yeah. Well, kind of. It's not quite that simple,
No, I
even
know,
on
but
NVIDIA, but yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
I had to program for NVIDIA once. It's
But I bring that up because
oh, you
it
were right. Coral did have an M.2.
okay, that's what I thought. But on the whole unified software stack, something and I know that it's capable of doing it, so I don't know what market per se, at least in the wider sphere of what a market is, there is for oh I want an OpenCL driver on the AMD NPU because I know it can do it. And AMD's well, we don't see a market use case for that. And my counterpoint to that was, well, your market use case for that is having developers being able to target your hardware
Mm.
directly, which is something that the GPU division has uh hopefully taken to heart, but
Yeah,
if they have, it took them a very long time too. Um,
yeah. So Felix says, yeah, Halo has an M.2 NPU. Excuse me. Also, MemoryX does. We saw them both in a Lenovo system at CES. However, not publicly available. So there's that. You have to. The only company that's really doing dev kits right now properly that's open to the public is TensTorrent, and I recently did a video covering those. We're going to try and get George a interview with Jim Keller at Hot Chips. See what
that
we
would be
can
fun.
pull off.
Um,
Um,
so you're right. It is non-trivial. It is MIDI, MIMD, so multiple instruction, multiple data, but it can do it.
mm,
And I think that is what they should. The biggest issue with AMD products as far as their GPUs and NPUs are concerned, and actually this goes for all the NPUs in the all the ecosystems, I don't care which one, is programming them is a pain in the back end.
mhm.
So it it's very it whoever wins will win not by having the most performant NPU, but by having the most
Developer
programmable.
support. Yeah,
Yeah, the best of
yeah,
dev support. And seemingly, yeah, I've been
yeah.
trying to
No,
get this across to folks, but
yeah. It's. I know what you mean. Um, Sune asks, it seems like AMD is betting on SMT. Are there any numbers on the IPC uplift with SMT? Um, Typically, IPC is just quoted as a single instruction thread,
mhm,
and you extract the parallelism from that thread. So, WCCF ages ago tried to argue the point that no, they keep saying single core performance, so they have two threads, therefore they should win, and we all battered them down, saying you're idiots. This has been an industry standard since SMT, was a glint in the eyes of people in the 60s. So, um, yeah, it's Intel is still betting on hyperthreading as well. It will just be selective where they use it.
yeah.
Lunar Lake not using it is almost an aberration. Um,
Well, it's also like just because one product doesn't use it
doesn't
does
mean
not mean that they're
it's dead.
abandoning it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's this is a question we probably can't answer.
any
Any
thoughts?
thoughts on what Zen 5 server could have on the server market? Well, 192 core CPUs
Yeah.
and probably
Um,
128 core and probably 64 core as well. That's about it,
so
because that's all we know.
yeah, like beyond that, what are the market dynamics of AMD releasing a 192 core CPU? I don't know. Could be
Yeah.
interesting, but like that's not something up my wheelhouse.
So
Also, Jordan makes a point. Windows cries after 128.
um,
So,
yeah, it's I'm running the 64 core Threadripper Pro right now, and I have hyperthreading turned off. Oh, sorry, SMT turned off. One, because Windows more than 64 threads has a hissy fit. Still in enough to make me not want to use it, but also it means that each thread gets full access to all the resources of a core. There's no competitively shared anything if you're not running. And to be honest, with my Broadwell system for 8 years, I didn't have hyperthreading enabled on that because 10 cores was enough. To be honest, 64 cores is a bit insane. Um,
a
I
bit.
could have used
I,
the 32 core. To be honest, but if my old system was Broadwell, then I've updated once in 8 years. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's gonna be interesting moving forward with all these big server core count CPUs. And I'll be honest here, I think one of the bigger losers, if you could say that, is probably gonna be Ampere.
Mm,
While their chips are targeted to a different market, I think with Intel coming out with Sierra Forest AP and AMD coming out with 192 core Turin, I could see some struggles there, especially because Ampere 1 still is not in VMs yet.
mm.
So,
Well, it's their business is more internal workloads than external right now still. Um, so it's I'll bring this message up from SkyMage. What can AVX512 be used for other than emulators in the consumer space? I think this is a little bit of a confusion just because of what news has already been out there, right? RSCP3, if I get that acronym correctly, made a
mhm,
big thing about supporting AVX512, and nobody else really has. But that's because they don't they see it as a performance increase in their software, not as they. So any sort of like AI upscaling tool that uses CPU uses AVX512. There will be commands in the software that you run that will probably have an AVX512 path that may be to do with scatter gather with data, or if they can see a use for it and it's the more efficient path and it's pre-compiled to do that way, then it will be. The video editing software I use on my Meteor Lake, when it's not using the GPU and it needs to use a CPU for some of the CPU only effects, it's Meteor Lake, so it's not running AVX512. But you know what I mean. That sort of situation is something where AVX512 could work. Um, I guess the distinction here is: do you consider a consumer device one that I would use for work, because that's technically a corporate device, but it's still a consumer grade silicon, right? So yeah, it's
so
for
so so
do,
Freak 777 power. I probably shouldn't say anything, but there are times, many times, where workloads just do not fit the GPU. You absolutely can have times where in Blender and whatnot, a CPU will absolutely decimate a GPU because say you have heavy branches or a lot of context switching within like there are
yeah.
so many scenarios where you can have a CPU just absolutely cream a GPU. So
Yeah.
it's nowhere near as straightforward as GPU wins. That's not. Again, workloads matter.
Hmm.
Workloads always matter, and that's what you need to talk about.
Yeah, it's changing a little bit. Have you got your hotel reserved for supercomputing 2024?
That was gonna be something. I was waiting to get the response back from SC24 for the acceptance letter. Um,
Oh yeah, have
I
they?
don't think I've gotten an email back from them yet.
No, I don't yet. Um,
Because they did open the registration, and I did register.
yeah, me too. 2 weeks ago, I haven't received
Yeah,
a press confirmation yet. No.
yeah, I was
Um,
waiting for that.
yeah, it's the same thing happened in Denver, both last year and the year before that. The availability of some of the hotels can go by really quickly because it's a popular conference. Um, so yeah, it depends whether you're comfortable spending $30 a night or $100 a night or $200 a night, right? I'm
Yeah,
usually somewhere in the middle range just because I also use the room for filming, so getting a slightly better. Um, Also, if I'm doing any sponsored work, I usually say, well, portion of that is definitely going to my hotel stay to make sure it's better. So yeah, you do end up overpaying for what would be a normal week to week thing, but it's sometimes it's the cost of doing business. I know, for example, we never got approved to go and attend Mobile World Congress in February until CES was done. So a month before that conference, and it's Barcelona, which is absolutely terrible for conferences, from a accommodation standpoint. Everything. So I think we spent best part of $4,000 for a flat for a week for three of us, and one of that was a shed. There was a shared room and a single room, and I think there was one bathroom, and it was tiny, and we all had to work from there, all because the company at the time didn't want to approve any travel for the rest of the year until CES had done. So another reason for leaving corporate bullshit. And then 2, are there any CPUs other than Power Enterprise with high latency memory that would benefit from higher than SMT2? You might be looking at some of like the you might be looking at some of the PZ stuff, some of the Japanese stuff, some of the Chinese stuff.
So jokingly, I refer to one of the, I think it's the i6500 or something.
Yeah,
You could argue as having SMT3.
yeah.
So it doesn't even need to be a power of 2.
So I will say, at the start of this show, we spoke about the Hot Chips conference, and one of the talks there is the accelerated in-memory compute sort of thing. I remember when, was it Samsung first announced that, or Hynix first announced that? All they did was, in their HBM, they added a few ALUs, such that when the data was movement, if you put a signal to a specific memory address, it would cause a batch of data, to have something added to it or something subtracted to it, that sort of thing. They said that run in SMT24 because that's how to extract the peak performance out of it. That was first generation. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing then, but some of the AI, some of the compute in memory stuff probably goes down that route quite heavily. So thank you for the $20. That will go towards accommodation for sure. So yeah, time to sleep on the floor of a friend's house, Samavis says. How many friends do you have in Atlanta? And staying at a friend's house when you're trying to work is arguably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Yeah, traveling with people sometimes when you're working is another thing. So it's I was expecting an email to come in, but it hasn't, and I'm not getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's reading my messages. Okay. I just want to see. How's Tom's Hardware? What are you posting now?
Oh. So, here it is. So, okay. So it's now official. So
Where are you
the
reading this?
Tom's Hardware, Paul just posted it. There has been an AMD official statement on Zen 5. To quote, "We
Hang on, let
appreciate."
let me bring this up in the
Okay.
in StreamYard.
Yeah.
Let's not share tab audio in case their autoplay crap comes along.
Yeah. Scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Well,
That's where
yeah,
the statement is.
yeah. AMD delays Ryzen 9000 launch due to unspecified quality issue. Huh, that's not what they told me.
To
Yeah,
quote the statement from AMD, "We appreciate the excitement around the Ryzen 9000 series processors. During final checks, we found the initial production units that were shipped to our channel partners did not meet our full quality expectations. Out of an abundance of caution to maintain the highest quality experience for every Ryzen user. We're working with our channel processors to replace the initial production units with fresh units. As a result, there will be a short delay in retail availability. The Ryzen 7 9700 and Ryzen 5 9600 will now go on sale on August 8th, and the Ryzen 9950X and Ryzen 9 9900X processors will go on sale on August 15th. We pride ourselves in providing a high quality experience for every Ryzen user, and we look forward to our fans having a great experience with the new Ryzen 9000 series. Jack Hun, AMD SVP and GM of Computing and Graphics.
Yep. So there is a 1 week delay for the Ryzen 7 and the Ryzen 5, a 2 week delay for the Ryzen 9. Something about that makes me think volume. It might not be quality, it could just be volume. Because if there's a quality issue, you're not going to spin new processors in that time between now and then. No.
Unless it's something that can be flipped in microcode. GISA update.
No, but then you'd have.
But even that has to be like look at how long. Look at
you
go back to the Intel 13th and 14th gen. Look at how long that they announced a potential finding in not that long, like 2 days ago, and they're releasing the patch in mid-August. Right? So it's
I know, but the point is it's just
but my overall point here is that it's unless it's even if it was microcode, I don't think that they could fix it in this short of a time. That's my point.
It's you need to update all the motherboards, all the CPUs, and they're not going to be opening retail packages. So I think the quality expectations may in itself be a typo on the packaging. May not even be the processors. It could just be the packaging. Because you're not going to do a new spin. Right?
Yeah. No,
and when they're saying
and a
quality,
new spin would take at least 3 months.
Yeah.
At least.
So, and yeah, they're not set. Obviously, any samples that I've got sent out will need to be updated anyway with BIOS and whatever, because that's normally what happens. But yeah, this sounds to me just like a packaging. Misprint. So all the CPUs got to go back. They got to get repackaged with the new packaging. They take the hit on the 50,000 units or whatever that they've already shipped, or 150,000, whatever. And they maybe they shipped it as Arzen and missed out the Y in Ryzen, or that sort of thing. Yeah. So no, this is not oxidation. This is not a manufacturing defect. Oh, Paul. Honestly. He's talking about testing for known good die, including, this step of the process to the ensure packaging testing process. Therefore, an issue found in packaging testing may or may not be directly related to the packaging implementation. It would still take a freaking long time, even if you had known good die. I mean, with our package product testing process.
Well, okay, so tiny tangent, but if you go look at the article from
as Daryl says, they could say it's made for Win24 on the box, and that was just a joke.
Yeah,
and they forgot to take it out. It's
but considering that they did say we are working with our channel partners to replace the initial production units.
Well, okay. So they're taking the parts back. They're repackaging them in new boxes without the typo. That's all that means. Come on, Occam's razor, simplest solution.
Also,
it's okay. So there could be like a testing thing where they didn't test, enough batches or enough numbers of normally, say a batch of processors is 20,000, they might test 100 from that batch, right? Just to see if there's any fundamental stochastic issues with that batch. They also have the breakdown on a per die, per chiplet from the fab anyway, based on the fab testing. Yeah,
So
it's
maybe they handed a couple. They handed the ball to Linus, and he dropped the ball.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, you could say processors that they sell to OEMs to trays wouldn't be affected by this. Maybe it's a printing error on the heat spreader.
I I won't claim to know.
Mm. Oh, my email just came in a few minutes ago, by the way. So yeah, nice and late.
Yeah,
AMD will rescreen the chips pulled from the field to identify any potential issues, then return unaffected models to retail channels. So yeah, it could just be testing a particular voltage mode. But again, that's packaged processors, not part of the packaging process.
yeah, and I would rather them delay a little bit than have like a a 13th or 4th. Well, I hesitate. I would rather
It's
them delay
it's
than have widespread issues hit folks, right? That
you know what annoys me is the state of mindset that we're in now as a consuming public is, even though AMD says, that not a single chip with a quality issue is delivered to a customer, you can bet your bottom dollar that people are going to test this one harder than they've ever tested a processor before to see if they can break it
yeah,
and then call it a systemic issue because of what's been in the press recently. It's Do you remember back years ago we would have to deal with people complaining about extreme degradation on their processors, only to find out they've been running Prime 95
yeah, yeah.
for a week with stock cooling?
It's like that's not
No shit.
degradation. That's just you being stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
I well, again,
Omnis says they
yeah,
printed Ryzen 9 9999X.
in a roundup tries in 10, yeah.
It's that floating
But
point.
slight tangent. It, and here's a rant. I'm about to get on my soapbox. The tech media and just media in general has become so negative as of late, and people have stopped asking the question why, like,
Yep.
or what, or how. Not there. Okay, like perfect example, the Turin slide that Intel fought against at Computex.
Yeah.
No, everybody's like, oh, everybody jumped to the conclusion, oh, AMD lied. No,
Yep.
no, 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 that's not what the question you need to ask is how did AMD get those numbers?
Hmm.
But seemingly people have stopped asking that question, and it's fucking infuriating.
It's I mean, this is a wider discussion. We The way journalists and media earn money these days is changing. Before video, it used to be all on-site ads.
Mhm.
As a result, as some of that money moving out and some people spending less, they're being more obtrusive. Ob- they're being more annoying with their ads, but
Yeah.
they're also having to put in some more severely clickbaity headlines to get people through the door. Not so much a problem in video in the tech space, except for a few people. We know that there are some people who have grown substantially through being substantially negative. Or we know that when they're negative, it dries up the views. When they turn up at a vendor's door at 8 a.m. on Monday morning after posting a video Friday night at 5 p.m. before anybody's had a chance to look at it, respond during working hours. that sort of things happens, or any leak or any anything, it becomes all about, I'm the one that presented this leak, I'm the one that presented this leak, I'm the one that presented this leak, not about
not daily games.
it. We're an industry where your work should speak for yourself, and yes, you should get fairly compensated for your work. Quality and speed is a dial.
Yeah.
But there's a reason, tooting our own horns here because we're allowed to. This is a reason why George and I go and speak to engineers. We go and try and find the details that we think you, as our audience, want to hear about. And then listen to us talk about all the different comparison points about what goes on in this space and where the direction is going. Because I know I speak to investors pretty much on a weekly basis these days, because they're always wondering about what the latest competitive nature is, how people are thinking about things internally, and I can give them public statements about what's going on. We're just coming up to financial season, that sort of thing. I was speaking with a company today about doing some content with them in the future about what's next for their what should they focus on for their big marketing push that will get them seen as a technical powerhouse in what they do. So we were going over some of the things that they do differently to other people, but also some of the ways in which they lead from a tech space. There are media in the industry who refuse to speak to engineers, and I know this because I've repeatedly asked them, why don't if you had infinite money, infinite time, why don't you speak to engineers? And they say because they'll just lie to us, because they're paid for by the company, or we want the honest to God consumer out of box experience. But my response to that is, how can you provide extra value that people don't know about if you don't go do these things? And okay, different strokes, different folks, whatever. It is what it is. Some of these guys do good work, and I do call them out when they do good work, when they find interesting things. It's I rarely hold grudges unless you've ripped off my content and not cited me. So it's there's been a few of those, but otherwise, do good work. I'm more than happy to have conversations and speak to people who I think are being honest about what they do, and our viewpoint, have the viewpoint of this industry is evolving into something positive. Let's do right by the consumer. Let's find out what the next stage in Moore's law is. Fun fact, I have a video going live tomorrow where I have a pretty big multi-billion-dollar company VP saying he doesn't care about Moore's law. And I
wonder what company that could be.
It ain't Nvidia, let's put it that way. Because I know Nvidia's a big proponent of Moore's law is dead.
Intel either.
It's a very funny interview, and there's a video and a thing going up on the newsletter about that as well. So lots of things going on. We're just coming shy of 3 hours since we started the stream, so I think we should perhaps put a pin in it there. Because I need to have dinner, and it's 9:30 now.
I need lunch.
We did wonder whether we were going to stay up for that announcement. I knew something was coming. I didn't know exactly what and when, but I knew kind of when.
I suspected something was up because, to not issue any CPUs is a bit weird.
Okay, that's a bit behind the scenes. Normally, when companies sample us, right, we can't tell people we've got a CPU for testing, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why this green screen is here, right?
Yeah.
So the so some of the behind the scenes stuff is that these companies sample 1, 2, 3 weeks ahead of launch. So
I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily behind, people getting samples to run stuff. I don't think it's necessarily behind the scenes.
No, but knowing exactly who, when, where, and
I guess I don't really see that as behind the scenes info personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's behind the scenes that we may speak about in person, perhaps not on camera. But let's cut it there, because we've gone through AMD Zen stuff quite a lot. Let's see what we talk about next week. Whether Intel's fixed the issue or something else.
Another 3 hours for next week. Ambitious,
well, I
Dr.
mean,
Ian.
it's yeah, but we'll we'll have to check versus the WAN show, see if we beat them. Probably not.
Yeah.
Because they go through a million merch messages.
Yeah.
So it's thank you all for sticking around. Thank you to those who sent in super chats. Much appreciated. Thank you. You will find my content on this channel, TechTechPotato. I also have a newsletter called More Than More. For anybody who's wondering, More Than More is the company. TechTechPotato is the YouTube brand. George runs the newsletter, the blog, however you want, the website over at Chips and Cheese. Yeah, at chipsandcheese.com. They also have a new YouTube channel with the interview with Mike Clark on. You'll see some more stuff going up on there. So please do give him a couple of subscribes as well.
And I do sincerely apologize for the audio issues.
That's fine. It's fine.
First time trying the setup, something was bound to go wrong.
Awesome. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one.
Have a good one.